So we'll call to order the regular City Council meeting of Tuesday, December 8th, 2020 at 6 p.m. As always, we are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all treaty people. Are there any changes to the agenda as presented?
Yes, Your Worship. Administration has two modifications to the agenda this evening. Under business items, item G, appointment of city external auditor, and item H, award of contract for banking services. All documents have been distributed to council and the agenda has been updated to include the items on the website in the agenda portal. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Can I get a motion of council, or sorry, can I get a motion by a member of council to approve the agenda as presented? Councillor Hendricks.
So moved.
Or amended. Discussion on the motion. All right, seeing none, all in favor? I see the voting buttons are back. And that, I assume, Councillor Danlock, the raised hand means you're voting in favor?
Yes.
Yeah, so that carries unanimously. Or did you have a question? I guess I should have said that.
Nope, sorry.
Consent agenda. There are a number of items on the consent agenda tonight. I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, adoption of regular council meeting minutes of November 24th. Item 5B, special council meeting minutes of November 26th. Item 5C, budget deliberation minutes of November the 26th. Item 5D, budget deliberation minutes of November 27th. Item 5E, budget deliberation minutes of November 28th. Item 8A, establishment of the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission. Item 8G, appointment of the city external auditor. And item 8H, award of contract for banking services. And item 10A, Councillor Danlock's report. Discussion on the motion. Okay, seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. We have no items on the, hang on, I've lost my thing. We have no members. Ms. Winter, correct me if I'm wrong, no open forum tonight?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have no registrations for open forum this evening.
Thank you very much, which brings us to item 6A, public hearing for bylaw 99-20, amendment to the election signage regulations in our zoning blueprint, the land use bylaw 944-19. I will declare now that the public hearing is open and the hearing is being held pursuant to sections 230, 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended. The city clerk. It's been a while since we've done this.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to members of council and the public. The purpose of bylaw 991-19 is to amend the election signage regulations in our zoning blueprint land use bylaw 944-19. Notice of the public hearing was provided in writing to the City of Edmonton, Leduc County, and the school boards. The public hearing notice was advertised in the local newspaper on November 13th, November 20th, November 27th, and December 4th, 2020. The public hearing notice was advertised on the Beaumont's website beginning of November 27th. Any written submissions received have been included in the agenda package, and there's nothing to read into the record at this time.
Thank you very much. So as we get going, I'd like to remind everybody that's giving an oral presentation this evening, as you're starting, to please clearly state your name and ask that the presentations be brief and to the point. And we'll open it up to, we'll start with the Director or Planning and Development or their designate for the first presentation on the public hearing, please. What are we looking at? Mr. Rates and Ms. Dargy.
So good evening, Council. My name is Stephen Rates, and I work as the Municipal Planning Intern within the City of Beaumont. I think for our remarks regarding this amendment are more fulsomely captured within the presentation that we'll share later on within the agenda and would reflect the discussion that we've had so far over October and November. I'll defer to Ms. Dargy now, just if there's anything else to capture here.
Just as a quick thing, I wouldn't mind a quick overview, as this is a public hearing. And we will be asked to do second and third reading right after this. So can you just run it down in a bit of an overview?
Yes, so I'll provide the overview, and then Ms. Dargy can add to anything. For this amendment to the land use bylaw, what administration has proposed falls in line with the overarching approach that we're hoping to apply to update our election signage regulations within the city of Beaumont. What has occurred is we have extracted the regulations from within the land use bylaw that speak to design, placement, and timelines, and just clearly defined what election signs are within the land use bylaw and direct that regulations for this activity within the city of Beaumont are captured within a council policy labeled council policy election signs. And the full description of design, placement, and timelines is captured within that policy. The enforcement mechanism for election signs placed on private property, which is the focus of the land use bylaw, would be captured within the existing form of the land use bylaw within the enforcement section. And that would cover the amendments that are for the land use bylaw specifically, which we are speaking to within the open house, or sorry, the public hearing.
Appreciate that. Ms. Dargy, additional comments?
Thank you, Worship to the Council. Just to add to Mr. Rates' comments, with respect to the land use bylaw amendment specifically, we've taken out any specific reference to the size of the signage, the duration of the signage, and the location of the signage, and referred rather to the council policy that we're bringing forward later in the meeting. So that's the amendment that affects the land use bylaw specifically.
Appreciate that. Is there questions for members of council for administration? All right, seeing none, really do appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this and moving forward. At this point, I will ask if there is anybody waiting to speak in favor of the bylaw. Ms. Winner?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have any registrations this evening.
Neither for opposed either? So that's next.
No, Your Worship, I do not.
Okay, and I guess we don't have any person deeming themselves to be affected either.
No, Worship.
Sorry, I'm hitting the forms. Okay, so I guess it's up to administration. If you wish to make a concluding statement, then we'll wrap the public hearing and move into second and third reading of the land use bylaw amendments.
I have no further statements to provide, and look forward to presenting the remaining components of the update to election sign regulations later within this council meeting.
Appreciate that. So at this point, we'll thank administration, and we will call the public hearing closed and move to, sorry, scrolling down here. I will ask, is there a member of council willing to move second reading of bylaw 991-20 to amend our zoning blueprint land use bylaw 944-19 to update the regulations regarding election signs as presented in attachment 1, bylaw 991-20 land use bylaw amendments? And hopefully we don't have to say that all again. Councillor Stout. You're on mute. Something's not working. Councillor Stout.
Must be a mic problem.
All right. Councillor Stout's having mic problems, so we'll move to Councillor Hendricks. Are you willing to move it?
Your Worship, just a question on procedure. Given the agenda format, are we okay to go from 6A to essentially 9A at this point?
Hang on, let me. Well, 9A is the election bylaw, which is a new bylaw in terms of elections.
Yep.
This is the land use bylaw amendment that basically takes the stuff out of the land use bylaw and puts it into the further bylaws down the way.
Yeah, that's where thank you. I'm just trying to follow your thread here. So 9B,
Yeah.
right? So just want to make sure we're,
Yeah, no, we're good because we're dealing with the land use
Okay.
bylaw right now. The
Okay.
ones down in 9 bylaws are,
just want to make sure that we got, you
separate
know where I'm
bylaws.
going. So
Yeah, we're good.
thank you.
I know where you're going.
Yeah,
Is
thank you.
everybody clear where we are and how we are? Counselor Stout, have you guys got her fixed? Still looking for somebody to move second reading here. No, still don't have them. Counselor Danlick?
Back to move second reading.
In lieu of Councillor Stout's
Okay.
microphone, I'll move.
Thank you very much, Counselor Danlick. Sorry, Counselor Stout, we got to get your technical problems fixed. Discussion on the motion of second reading. All in favor? Sorry, did you have a? That carries unanimously. Is a member of council willing to move third reading? Counselor Muncott Swain.
Move
Thank
third
you
reading.
very much, council. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of third reading? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. That carries unanimously, and hopefully that leads into some further discussions down when we get to item 9. That brings us to a close. Item 6A, which brings us to a resident presentation from the Leduc and District Victim Services Unit.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just going to add them into the meeting right now. Hi, Stephanie, if you can hear me, if you want to turn on your microphone and your camera.
Hi, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We have you loud and clear.
Okay, awesome. I'm just waiting for Jim.
I'm just trying to get him in the meeting right now.
Okay.
Hi, I can hear you. Can you hear me? I can hear you now. Yep.
Yes, we can. We have you loud and clear.
Okay, awesome.
Right. Somebody's got the meeting going in the background because they can hear the lag.
Jim. What
I'm
is
just trying to get him in the meeting right now. If you can just please mute the YouTube video that you have going in the background for the live, for the feedback, please.
Okay, I think I've got it.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. So Stephanie and Jim, welcome to the meeting. Appreciate you being here with us here tonight to present on the good work that the Leduc and District Victim Services Unit does, and looking forward to your update. Floor is yours.
Jim is starting, so I'm just wondering if he is in or not.
Jim's in, but he's on mute.
I wonder.
Still on mute.
Oh, are we there yet?
There we go. Got you.
Thank you, sir. Your worship, members of council and administration. Thank you for this opportunity to teach me some new technology. I appreciate that. And Stephanie and I will be very quickly walking through this presentation that we have submitted. So with regard to sequencing, we were wondering if we were to control the slides or if we could ask for ease of presentation, if we could have the slides controlled at your end.
I can do that, Mayor. It'll just take me a second to pull it up here.
Thank you.
Sure, I was gonna say, I'm having trouble unmuting. Yeah, no, we can get Ms. Winder to pull it up and share the screen, and then just let us know when you want the slide advanced.
Excellent. Thank you. Apologize for the delay there. There we go.
No worries. There we go. Oh, it's gone again.
Without doubt, technology is making our lives so much better.
I generally agree with that statement, but there.
Sorry, Mayor, I do have it showing that it's actually sharing on my side, so I'm not sure what's happening here.
Okay, we did have it shared, and now it's gone again, and then, but it was still up in its, yeah, we're up and running, so we got the whole thing, and there we go. So whenever we're ready, we can just start.
Terrific. Presumably I'm no longer on mute.
Yeah, you're still good.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, Your Worship, members of council and administration, thank you for this opportunity. And Stephanie Ricci and myself would like to just do a very quick presentation on the status of the Leduc and District Victim Services. Next slide, please. As you are probably aware, we're going to follow this format. So we'll do a quick introduction, a bit of background, who we are, what the role of victim services is, some operational considerations. We'll present information on, of course, the city of Beaumont, some challenges, and then current stats. Next slide, please. Stephanie?
As you all know, I'm sure already, you've been supporting our unit for quite some time, but we are a police-based nonprofit organization who serves victims of crime and trauma in the Leduc and District area. And we have since the 1990s. Staff and volunteer advocates are who responds to calls for service to our victims of crime and trauma. Jim, you want to take the next one?
For sure. And just you'll see a couple of acronyms like LDVSU, that's the unit, that's the staff and volunteers. I am the chair of the Leduc and District Victim Assistance Society. We're a not-for-profit board that provides oversight and guidance to the unit. Next slide, please.
In terms of staff, I guess our latest update is this is the first time in quite some time that we've had 4 full-time staff. Some days it feels like we could use more in here. What I can say about our staff quickly in general is that we were all volunteer advocates before we became part of victim services staff. So we definitely have a team who's very passionate about victim services and supporting victims of crime and trauma. And we all have various backgrounds and come from different victim services units across Alberta. Next slide, please.
On the board side, we actually have a brand new board as of May. The members voted in some new talent. The group brings in a lot of human resources and especially victim services expertise. And we also have law enforcement and community outreach on our board. We did, however, have a noted lack of leadership experience on volunteer boards. So with that in mind, I was a junior advocate, and it's nice to be junior at something when you see my age and stage. So I actually stepped back from my role as a junior advocate and took on the position of chair to help the board get up and running and get itself moving forward. So generally my role as a mentor to the board, I've penciled in, probably will take us about 2 years to get there. Next slide, please. Stephanie, would you like to take that one?
Sure, I will, yeah. So again, the role of our unit, our staff and our volunteers is we do provide support, referrals and information. This is 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year to victims of crime or trauma. And often our staff and our volunteers meet victims in our communities on what can be obviously some of the most difficult days of their lives. So not an easy task, especially when we look to our volunteers who volunteer their time to support people in the community who have been a victim of crime. Next slide, please. Just to touch on some of our operations. As I mentioned earlier, we have 4 full-time staff now. We have currently 16 active volunteers who commit to 4 12-hour shifts a month throughout the entire year. One positive thing to note, we're always recruiting. We've been fortunate to still be able to actively recruit during the pandemic. And we have 6 volunteers who are awaiting for their clearances to join our team. As you can see on the slide, we provide service in all of the detachments that are in our district. Currently, right now, with the new restrictions that have come into play, and they're forever changing, it seems, as of today again, our volunteer advocates are providing phone support only, and this will be 24 hours, 7 days a week. That piece of the puzzle won't change, but again, just to try and do our part, there won't be any in-person contact by our volunteers or staff until further notice, and Alberta Health allows that. We did have at the start of the pandemic similar situations where COVID shut down that in-person call to service. One thing that is still continuing that was shut down at the start of the pandemic is court. I don't know how that could ever close again because our backlog is crazy right now. So we're fortunate that we're still able to proceed with support for court. Next slide, please. I guess we're, again, not any different than a lot of organizations out there right now. I guess our biggest challenges for 2020 due to COVID was the loss of our 2 largest fundraisers. Every year we have that uncertainty of secured funding through Solicitor General. I'm happy to report that this year we did receive our funding from them, so our unit will stay in business. And the biggest thing when it comes to our victims is this year, we really noticed an increase in the domestic violence and increase in our mental health clients, which is something I think that was kind of talked about at the start of the pandemic, that there might be an increase in those 2 areas. And I can see our unit has definitely been seeing that. Next slide, please. I won't go into too much detail. It's statistics and they're there for you to read. And if at any time you have any questions after the presentation is done or after your meeting, I'm always available to take phone calls. But speaking to what we've seen an increase in, I can say that, again, the top things that we've dealt with in Beaumont have been family violence and our mental health clientele. Next slide, please. These next two slides are just a simple kind of graph to kind of give you an idea of what 2019 and 2020 has looked like in terms of call outs, preparations, supports. And you can see at the start of the pandemic where it kind of hit us, but we are ramping up again. Calls for service are increasing, our files are increasing. So I anticipate 2021 being a very busy year for us again. We can touch on the next slide again. It's similar to this one. Again, the number of new files and our clients served. And again, we're back on the increase. So again, if anybody has any questions about those, I am available to chat about them at any given time. Next slide, please.
Before we wrap up the presentation, I just wanted to take an opportunity to expand on an earlier comment that I made about my role as a mentor. In the past 8 months, I have to say that this board has been highly motivated, high functioning, and very passionate about bettering victim services in Leduc District and in the city of Beaumont and so forth. In all our entire area, they have really upped their game and doing it all in the context of a global pandemic. So what I wanted to announce tonight is actually I'm resigning as chair of the board because there is a wealth of talent that is ready to go, has their hands on the wheels of the victim service board. So I wish to fully endorse what you're about to see in the tough months to come, and I anxiously look forward to returning to my role as a volunteer junior advocate because, like Stephanie says, this is expected to be a busy time, and we're not talking about delivering lattes here. So with that, I need to get my training up and running again. So with the final slide, we would like to thank the city of Beaumont and the administration in particular for walking us helpfully through this slide set. And we're ready to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
We do appreciate that. The Leduc District Victim Services Unit does exceptionally good work, not only in our community, but the surrounding district. And I do appreciate those supports, and I understand where you're coming from with wondering about whether or not your funding from the province will be there from day to day, as we have the same wonders. So anyway, open it up to questions from members of council. Councillor Hendricks, followed by Councillor Hendricks, followed by Councillor Danlock.
Yeah, Your Worship, thank you. Actually, for me, it's more, I want to extend a compliment to Mr. Hiley, a gentleman who's put a lot of time into the volunteering circles of Beaumont over all these years. You know, his work has been well received within the community, and certainly I extend my thanks as a citizen of Beaumont and certainly as a councillor for all the work, Jim, that you've done over the years. You and I have participated in many adventures with respect to the volunteerism piece, and I've watched you in action. You've done a great job, so thank you. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you for the kind words, and I look forward to, like you, continuing to better the city of Beaumont.
Thank you.
Councillor Danlock, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to echo Councillor Hendricks' comments to Jim. Thank you for your service. It's been a great number of years. Looking forward to you continuing on. And I do want to thank our presenters and the work they do. I can't believe the stress the employees must be under. In a normal year, this year's just got to be a lot worse for your stress level. So thank you, all the work you're doing. I have got one quick question. On the statistics you shared with us in the first 10 months of this year, family violence, 111 types of offenses. What exactly constitutes family violence? What type of calls would that entail? That's a very large number, and it's a bit alarming, which I'm sure you would probably share that sentiment. So what exactly would be considered family violent types of calls that would make this statistic, please?
So our family violence calls, typically our calls come in and they're coded through the RCMP. So they're dispatched to a call. That could be something, something I don't want to say as simple, but for lack of a better word, as simple as there's a domestic dispute in the home and police have had to attend. It could be something to the extent where there's been a physical assault.
Okay. So quite a wide range of what I anticipated, but it gives me an idea of the latitude. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you very much to Stephanie and Jim for the excellent presentation. My question is following up on the family violence statistics, as well as some of the other supports that you provide to citizens, especially now. Just wondering what grants, if any, other than coming from the Solicitor General, has your group been able to access, or do you think you might be able to access for that particular support, which I think, given what we're seeing everywhere, is going to be unfortunately higher. So I'm just wondering what, if anything, you've been able to determine can help you replace some of the lost funding that you're not going to be able to realize, given the fundraising is kind of on hold. So just any comments about that, I'd appreciate.
Well, I think family violence is a big part of our unit, and we definitely see a lot of that throughout the entire district. So what I can say is this year we secured 2 different grants. One was the Survivors and Victims of Crime Week grant, as well as the Family Violence Initiative grant. We've been fortunate as a unit to be provided with those grants. We've been accepted each year that we've applied. I'm anticipating next year not being any different. But in terms of grants, we are definitely looking to amp up our fundraising, and can appreciate that that's a challenging time for everybody right now, especially in the nonprofit world. But that is what we were able to successfully get this year. And we are always open to suggestions on new grants to apply for, which is something that we are actively always doing. But that was what we were able to get this year, and we did put that to use. We just did a family violence initiative calendar to, it was called Ending the Silence. So it was a domestic violence calendar that was put out where we received the grant, and it was to spread awareness and to kind of get people talking about family violence. As well as we were hosting a self-defense workshop for women in Beaumont. That was all arranged and ready to go. We were scheduled to do an in-person. We actually weren't certain what kind of feedback we were going to receive because of COVID. So we had originally started with 1 session, and it was for women ages 18 and up. And we quickly learned we needed to add a 2nd session and a wait list. But due to COVID, we postponed, but we are in the works of hopefully being able to put that on via Zoom. And I'm hopeful that our participation level will still be up there. It's hard to say. People are missing that in-person connection, but I'm hoping we can still fulfill that workshop through Zoom.
Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I do support it and want to hear from you if we can, maybe more than once a year. Just let us know how things are going. I really do appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no further requests to speak from members of council, so I'd like to say thank you to Stephanie and Jim for coming in tonight and giving us this update. It's always appreciated. And I'd like to pass on my personal thanks for Jim for all the volunteering you have done in this community over the years, and hopefully it's just a change of venue and not the end of it. So appreciate all that you do, and look forward to seeing you in the future.
It's my pleasure, Your Worship. Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I know it's early, but I'd really like to take a 3-minute break to see if we can't get Martin's mic fixed, because it makes it really hard to engage if we can't get him speaking. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. If Shalane or Mike could work with Councillor Stout to see if we can get his mic working, that'd be great. So we'll take 5, see if we can fix the tech problems, and then come back and start off with item. Apologize for the brief interruption. Everything's up and running and working now, so call the meeting back to order. Which brings us to item 8B, 2020 capital budget update. And it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 motions as part of this one. So we'll let admin introduce it, and then we'll start going through it. Who will speak? Mr. Dowler, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council. For you tonight is an update from administration on the 2020 capital budget. Overall, administration has been able to deliver the majority of projects on time and under budget. However, there are some projects that are forecasted to require some additional dollars. Included in this update are 6 motions administration is seeking council approval on. The first 3 relate to outdoor rink projects. Starting with the postponement of Bellevue Outdoor Rink, as administration is in continued discussions with the Black Gold Division on various matters related to this project. The next 2 motions are seeking approval for additional budget for the outdoor rink project at Donzaroo and Ken Nickel that are nearing completion. Administration is then seeking approval for additional budget to complete the Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center project. There have been a design oversight in this project that has required some additional dollars in order to operate the building at the expected level of service. The 5th motion in front of council deals with Range Road 241 project. The project funded from offsite levy requires additional dollars associated with a utility relocation that was unanticipated at the beginning of the project. Finally, in front of council is a 6th motion seeking the approval of a new capital project for the Ken Nickel Regional Recreation Center revitalization. This project is funded from grants, which administration learned recently was approved by the provincial government. The last comments I would make is all of the proposed motions in front of council within this report have either been reflected in the 2021 budget that's next on the agenda or have no impact on the 2021 budget. And with that, we would be open to any questions council may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deller, for the presentation and the background information in the ARFT. I really do appreciate that. Before I open it up to motions, we'll try and get all the clarification questions and then go through the motions. I do have one clarification question in relation to the BSRC. Just to be clear, what you're asking for is a scope change, not a cost overrun. Like we're adding to the building and need more funds. We're not trying to make up funds from the project that should have been there.
Maybe I'll take that one, Mr. Dowler. Take a shot at that one. When the original scope was approved, Mayor Stewart, a lot of the tech for the BSRC was missed. So our efforts are going to be to go back to the architect and find out why that was missed. But there's no excuse for it. We missed it. So this tech was not included in the original scope or the FF&E. And that's why that makes up for the bulk of those costs.
I appreciate that. So the question is, yes, this is a change to the scope of work that the contractor bid on, regardless of who missed it. It's an upgrade, not necessarily a, yeah. We're not paying for stuff that should have been in the original bid that was in the original bid is my question.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. All right, open it up for questions to members of council. Councilor Mungoff-Swain.
Yeah, more of a comment just along that BSRC. So you're in the report identified that this is going to be serviced from debt, and you've identified that that will have an impact on the 2021 operating budget of approximately $61,000 in order to service that debt, and to reinforce that that administration through the 2021 budget process have found further efficiencies to cover that. So hence the comment that there will be no tax levy increase required, and we're still on target for a 0% increase. Can you just confirm that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Monkoff-Swain. That is correct. At the end of budget deliberations, Council did direct administration to go back and make sure that the projected tax levy increase for 2021 would be 0%. And at that time, we were looking for about $33,000. So we did identify the $33,000, and then looking at dealing with the cost overrun or the expanded scope of BSRC, we were able to determine or identify another $61,000 to cover the debt payments, essentially through further rationalization of the 21 budget. And so again, confirmation that there is no increase to taxes or the tax levy projected for this debt.
Thank you for that. And I guess just a comment of good job and good work, and thank you for finding that and meeting the goal there. So that's all I wanted to share regarding those. Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, Mr. Dowler, the fifth motion is around the Range Road 241, and it talks about potentially recovering the costs through off-site levies. High probability a portion of these costs may be recovered from the utility provider. Are you anticipating possibly a all or nothing situation or something in between in terms of recovery there? What is the expectation or the thought patterns of administration on recovery of that a partial amount or all the amount, please? What's your spider sense tell you?
Thank you, Councillor Daniluk, for the question, and I'll try and answer. And then if I mess up, Ms. Dargier will probably jump in, I'm sure. I think it's going to be somewhere in between. I wouldn't expect the full cost to be recovered. I think we would hope for something. I mean, obviously, I'd hope for the full $325. I'm just not sure that's the reality. I think it'll be somewhere between 0 and $325.
Okay. That is sufficient, Mayor Stewart, I think, for what the ballpark idea was. I couldn't really interpret from the information if there was a high probability in terms of full cost recovery or somewhere in between. That's good enough for tonight for my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I see Ms. Dargy popped up. Did you have anything to add, or are we good?
No, I had just wanted to be available in case there was a further question, as Mr. Dowler had indicated, that I might be able to provide additional information.
Appreciate that. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to the administration for the report. And yeah, I agree with Councillor Monkoff-Swain. Good work on finding the needed dollars. Two questions. One is, will the existing rink at Bellevue continue to be operational this year? Is there any change to anything happening this year? And the second question, just to give it so you can answer both at the same time, is there any impact on any of our reserves for the BSRC extra cost?
So to answer your first question, Councillor Barnhart, I believe the idea is still to proceed with normal operations of Bellevue this year. Again, the weather, as much as it's great to have warm weather, it doesn't do very well for making ice. So I think that slowed us down there. In terms of the reserve, there is no impact related to the reserves in terms of the BSRC project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dowell.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to take a minute to speak to the Ken Nicola Regional Rec Center revitalization. During the review of the document here, there's a laundry list of upgrades that facility is going to get for that $2.2 million funding. And just to reiterate that was the new municipal stimulus program that was put out by the provincial government. So, these aren't the existing grants that, the MSI gas tax that folks are used to hearing about us using up. This is a full utilization of the program that was put out by the province. So just a clarification for those at home. Thank you.
Yeah, it should also be noted that some members at home may have seen us discuss this project during budget 2021. The grant funding got approved early, so we're approving it hopefully approving it tonight, depending on how the vote goes, to get that project moving just a little earlier than budget 2021. Councilor Monkoff Swain, I see no further requests to speak for round one. Did you have round two?
No, I was just ready to move the first motion, but I can wait. Sorry.
Awesome. I'm prepared to take the motion. If you're willing to move that council approve the postponement of the Bellevue Outdoor Rink Improvements Capital Project and grant funds be made available for other projects, I'd appreciate it.
So move, Your Worship.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, call the question. And that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move that council approve the additional expenditure budget of $300,000 for the Ken Nicola Regional Recreation Center Outdoor Rink Project to be funded from reserves? Councilor Hendricks.
So moved.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move that council approve the additional expenditure of $300,000 for the Dance Row Outdoor Rink Project to be funded from grants? Councilor Danlock.
So move, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Barnhart, question, or are you just making the, okay. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you very much. Is there a member of council, oh, sorry, that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move that council approve the additional expenditure budget of $1 million for the Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center project to be financed from debt? Councilor Stout.
So moved, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move that council approve the additional expenditure budget of $325,000 for the Range Road 241 project to be funded from offsite levy revenue? Councilor Barnhart, I keep seeing your hand come up.
It's hard to get in there. Yes. So moved, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. And lastly, I'll move that council approve a new capital project for the Ken Nicola Regional Recreation Center revitalization in the amount of $2,286,600 to be funded from grants. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Van Newkirk.
No, I was just looking to move the motion.
Oh, sorry. Seeing no discussion, call the question. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And thank you very much. Appreciate the update on, brings to a conclusion the update on budget 2020 capital, the 2020 capital budget. Which leads us right into item 8C, 2021 budget and 2021 to 2025 financial and capital plans approval. Mr. DeBlanco.
Good evening, Your Worship, and the rest of council. This evening, admin is bringing forward 4 motions for the adoption of the 2021 operating capital and utility budgets, as well as the 5-year financial and 5-year capital plans. The operating budget is based on a 0% increase to the municipal tax levy. Administration believes these budgets will allow council to continue with priorities identified in the strategic plan. Admin will return in April 2021 to update budget estimates and have finalized numbers for the education requisitions and assessment growth. Administration will then recommend any significant amendments required. Once the amended budget is approved, the property tax bylaw can also be approved, which establishes the residential and non-residential property tax rates for the year, and administration can commence distribution of tax notices. The public had opportunities to provide feedback on the budget via a "How would you balance the budget" online tool called Balancing Act, the results of which have been included in the budget package. An additional opportunity was at the open forum provided at the November 24th regular council meeting. The financial impact: if approved by council, the 2021 operating budget would result in a 0% tax increase. On average, this would result in no annual increase to the municipal portion of the property tax bill of a typical homeowner. If approved by council, the 2021 capital budget may result in future operating impacts to the operating budget. Administration will try to manage this impact on the operating budget without an increase to property taxes, but if required, may result in a tax increase in the 2022 operating budget. If approved by council, the proposed 2021 utility operating budget would result in an increase to the typical homeowner's utility bill of approximately $56 per year or $4.60 per month. Thank you to your worship and council. Administration can now take any questions you may have.
Appreciate that. So we have 4 motions that break it down nicely. So we'll take questions as we hit one. We'll go operating, capital, utility, and then the projected future plans. So is there a member of council willing to move that council approve the 2021 operating budget as outlined in attachment 1 with total tax supported operations of revenue of $45,238,700 and expenditures of $45,238,700. Tax supported operations revenue of $45,238,700 includes a revenue based on the general municipal property tax levy is estimated to be $21,016,400, which is a 0% municipal tax increase, and library taxes are also estimated to be $795,700. Estimated non-tax revenue for 2021 of $23,426,600. Is there a member of council willing to move the motion? Councillor Danluck.
Your worship, my pleasure to make that motion. Thank you very much.
Let's speak to it.
Not right now, thanks.
Okay, appreciate that, councillor. So open it up for questions from administration. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, your worship. Mr. De Blanco, you referred to a 0% tax increase leading to a 0% increases in tax bill for the average household. I guess the other factor in that is the assessed value of the property. Do we have any feeling for whether that has gone up, down, and by how much in 2021?
Thank you for the question. Through your worship to Councillor Stout, high level estimates is that assessment growth would be probably in the negative. Once again, we'd have to confirm with our assessor on that. But as indicated at the budget deliberations, setting the municipal tax levy at 0 and then the assessment up or down impact is evened out by whatever the municipal property tax rate is, which gets set in April. So regardless of whether the assessment overall increases or decreases, the average homeowner will see a 0% impact.
Thank you.
Councillor Hendricks.
Hey, your worship, I wonder if our admin could also just speak to our business community. I know we keep talking about residential. We just have a few comments for our business community in terms of this discussion.
Thank you for your question. Through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, a similar situation for non-residential property owners. The 0% tax levy increase indicates that, once again, per $100,000 of assessment, you will see, non-residential owners will see a 0% tax increase on average.
Right. And your worship, I'm assuming this discussion will find its way to the chamber?
I'll make sure of it.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
I was thinking down the same path as Councillor Hendricks and was going to direct to page 3 of the budget, which is 59 of the worksheet, and point out the same. We don't need to do that. And thank you for updating the chamber ×2.
Thank you.
We have a meeting. Chamber has a meeting on Thursday morning, which I'm happy to attend. Councillor Moncalfe-Swain.
Yeah, thank you. And as we're on the operating side, I'll take you to page 108 of the agenda package, or page 52 of the budget document itself. This is under family services. I'm pretty sure we're good. It's just an error, and I hate to point it out here, but I just wanted to clarify. On the bottom under budget 2120 on highlights, it says increasing child care fees by 10%. So just want to make sure that is just an oversight, and you guys within the budget, we got it at 3%. I didn't know where to find it in the actual numbers itself, but I just want to make sure that was just a brief miss, and that we did limit that increase to 3%.
Through your worship to Councillor Moncalfe-Swain, yes, that verbiage there is an oversight. The numbers, as you can see in the user fees and sales of goods line on that page, has been held relatively flat. The increase of the fees was 3%.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that math.
In this budget.
I didn't want to do that math. I'll let you do that. And no problem about the oversight. I just if we could just quickly update that before we publish it, that'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's all I had, John. Your worship.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and kudos to the administration for being able to help us to reach that targeted increase of 0. Not an easy task, and I know that it required a lot of efficiency, looking at a lot of efficiency in the administration, and the staff foregoing any merit increases and grid increases. So I'm really pleased and really want our residents to understand how this came about. Just by way of things happening and when they're happening, one of the additions is the additional grant in the FCSS program for nonprofits. And would that take place somewhere in the new year, in the first quarter? Would agencies be able to apply, or does that have to wait till later in the year, Mr. DeBlanco?
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, sorry, I would have to confirm with Director Willison and get back to you unless somebody else knows the answer to that one.
So essentially the dollars are there January 1, but we have to set up the program. Is that fair to say?
Once again, I'd have to confirm the parameters of the grant funding and then get back to you.
Okay, I won't put you on the spot, but I'll be asking again at another time. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to echo the previous comments of Councillor Barnhart, thank you to the administration for finding efficiencies and at the same time not reducing our service levels to our citizens. That's a grand achievement in this budget. I also want to thank Council for having the political will and the leadership to go for a 0 increase in our budget for 2021. It shows good leadership in these economic times. So thank you to Council administration, and I'm looking forward to passing the budget. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that, Councillor Daniluk, and actually that's the next item. I see no further requests to speak, and I do appreciate all the work of Council over the 3 days of budget and the hard work that it took to get us here, and the hard work of administration that continues to be ongoing. And after some of the announcements we heard from the province today, I imagine we're going to be having some further discussions in the near future surrounding costs. So I appreciate all the hard work, and at this point I will call the question. All those in favor of approving, and I'm going to paraphrase here, the Council 2021 operating budget. Wow, they beat me to it. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Is there a member of Council willing to move that the 2021 capital budget be approved in the amount of $17,031,600 as outlined in attachment 1? Councillor Stout. And you're still on mute.
That was this. Is that better? So moved, Your Worship.
There we go. Now we can hear you, yeah. All right, so we'll open it up to questions and discussions on the motion. Okay, seeing none, once again, Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just more of an observation. I know in our budget workshop, council had some discussions with the large multi-use field project, potentially carving out the cost of the field versus the storm pond and the path system. I think when I looked at the budget again tonight, I saw it as being one number. If it can be broken out, great. But I don't recall if we actually had a final decision on that, or just we had a discussion, never really came to a decision about actually breaking that into three separate projects from a cost perspective in terms of the capital budget line. So if council's finally leaving it at 5.5 as one project, I'm okay with that. Just to follow up from our workshop, I'm not sure if actually made a firm decision as to break them up into three or leave it as one large project at 5.5.
Well, we had the discussion, and then there was no motions to break it apart. And the motion that we passed at budget it was left at one line item. And so at this point, without wanting to go back and revisit the whole thing, that's where it sits right now.
And having said that, then my recollection is the same. If a motion was not made, so I'm fine with the way it is. I just want to get it clarified that we at least had the discussion and we decided not to do that. Thank you for clarifying.
Mayor Stewart, if you leave that with us, and we'll have a look at how we can separate that out for reporting purposes. We understand what you're after.
Okay, appreciate it, because that was my next question for you after we were done this, is if we could find a way to report on it, that'd be great. Thanks for reading my mind. So seeing no further requests to speak, we will call the question. All those in favor of approving the 2021 capital budget? And that carries unanimously. A lot of work ahead of administration as we go forward into 2021. Is there a member of council willing to move that the 2021 utility operating budget be approved as outlined in attachment 1 with revenues of $9,681,400 and expenditures of $9,681,400? Councilor Hendricks.
So moved, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion. I'll get you next time, Councilor. There's one more. Discussion on questions on the motion. All right, seeing none. Once again, a large amount of hard work done to get to the point with the utilities. Lots of interesting projects coming up there. Call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. And last motion, but not least, that council accept the 2021-2025 financial and capital plans as presented. Councillor Barnhart.
I got in there real early. So moved, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Once again, my thanks to council and administration. With the approval of that motion, it brings to end the 2021 budgeting process for this council and effectively what is our last budget process before we head into an election year. So once again, thank you very much for all the hard work that's gone into this. I think we landed where we needed to be in terms of tax increases and providing amenities and maintaining service levels for our residents. And look forward to what the next year brings in terms of that. All right, which brings us to item 8D, public board and committee appointments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public. Council is required to appoint members to several boards and committees upon expiration of each board committee member's respective term, or if a board and committee member resigns from their respective terms. Appointing citizens to serve on cities and boards and committees strengthens citizen engagement in the community, which is a key focus in council's strategic plan. This evening, administration is bringing forward a number of recommendations. First, the Community Events Committee, Alan Bertrand, Becky Hayton, Yash Sharma, Viral Bourgeois, Beaumont Municipal Library Board, Aruna Brienne, Dan McIsaac, with the Subdivision and Appeal Board, David Blades, and Leon Jans van Resenberg. My apologies. I hope I'm not butchering those names too much. The Recreation Parks and Culture Advisory Committee, Grant Tully. The Grant Funding Advisory Committee, Ambery Rosenbro, Kashmir Gill, Grace Frey, Amy Maw, and Leonard Spink, and to the Regional Assessment Review Board, Case Watson and Karen Dupas. Additionally, after compiling all the information, the clerk's office did receive one additional application. This evening, I'm asking if council would consider also making an motion for an appointment. The motion is that council reappoint Ron Barnhart to the Events Committee for a term to take effect immediately and expire on December 31st, 2022. Thank you.
Yeah, we can definitely add that name. So we'll go with the list as amended. Just before I ask a member of council to make this motion, I'd like to thank the deputy mayor. He and I spent some long hours reviewing applications and going through it. And I think we struck the right balance between reappointing existing members and adding some new blood to these committees. And I would ask that members of council support us in that and approve these as presented with the addition of Ron Barnhart. Is there a member of council willing to move that council approve the 2020 council board and committee public appointments as amended? Councillor Stout.
So moved, your worship.
Discussion on the motion. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. Just following on the comments you made there, am I to assume that we had more applicants than we had spaces?
Yeah, it was actually, it was really great to see. We had, except for the community events committee, we definitely were making choices this time around. Rather, the process went really well. We had lots of applicants for each committee, so it was good.
Awesome, right on. Well, what I would have to say is thank you for everyone for putting your name forward and filling out the applications and getting involved. It's really great to see that and to hear that. And for all those who have been reappointed, thank you for what you've done and what is ahead. And I appreciate that the work that every group does, but tonight I'm going to say an extra thank you to the Grant Funding Advisory Committee, being a fresh group that was put together, and their recommendations are, I'm sure, a back and forth conversation every time, trying to weigh all the asks that are coming in. So thank you to that group.
Thank you very much. Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. As you know, I have the privilege of serving on the CCBCC Advisory Committee as a council representative, and Councillor Stubbs is my backup on that committee. My understanding was we didn't have anybody looking forward to join that committee. Is that correct at this present time? Is that my understanding is correct? No applications for members to join that committee, of the public, I mean?
I gotta be honest, I don't remember Ms. Winter. Did you have one? I think, because I got to be honest, made a decision early on because I have a notice of motion coming in relation to this committee at the end of the meeting to suspend appointments to that committee until my notice of motion gets dealt with. So, but I'll be honest with you, I can't remember the answer to that question, whether we had people or not.
Your worship, through you to Councillor Daniluk, I can confirm that in the largest number of applications that we've received in the last 4 years that I've been with Beaumont. So that was very exciting. I can confirm that we did have a number of people that applied for positions on all the boards and committees, but in line of ranking that board was not in their top ranking.
Thank you. That was my assumption, just so I wanted to get out on the discussion table. It is a concern for my perspective. So thank you very much for that.
Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, while we're handing out accolades for some of these boards, I do want to comment on CEC and the Community Events Committee. The members there have what I consider battle scars from the COVID conversation. So many projects, programs, things that were organized and set ready to go and then had to be canceled as a result of COVID. So many hopes in going through what at that time was the province's theory on phasing. If we get to phase 3, things would happen. Of course, things got canceled. The CEC continues to meet on a reasonably irregular basis to try to plan for next year. And of course, today's events from our premier and his comments today, will reflect heavily on what happens next. And of course, we're all waiting for a vaccine to allow the programming to continue. So kudos on all those people that have been involved steady and heavily in this, the start, stop. They're champions for this community. So thank you from myself.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That community does a lot of hard work, and yeah, they've really taken their lumps this year through cancellations. And after the announcement from the premier today, I'm thinking they're going to have some more as well. So
yeah, I jokingly said we should be called the cancellation events committee.
Yeah, I really do hope that we can get COVID under control and we can get back to having some community events, because they are integral to our community and to our mental health. So
yes, thank you.
I really hope we get back.
Absolutely.
All right, seeing no further requests to speak, we'll call the question that council approve the 2020 council board committee public appointments as amended. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Please pass along congratulations on behalf of council to all those members of the public that were both appointed and reappointed to serve on these boards. We really couldn't do some of this work without them. Which brings us to item 80, notice of motion, Mayor Stewart, tax penalties.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to members of the public and council. In accordance with the meeting procedures bylaw, once a notice of motion is made, it will be placed on the next regular council meeting agenda in which the elected official who made the notice of motion is present to vote on whether the matter should proceed. At the November 24th, 2020 council meeting, Mayor Stewart made the following notice of motion: that council direct administration to look into the number of property tax penalties being assessed for 2020, given the approval of the deferral program, to provide information on the effectiveness of those measures and if people and businesses are still in need of them, to provide recommendations to extend or implement other measures, and provide recommendations to ensure that the penalty process is aligned with the intent of the deferral program. At this time, administration is looking for direction on how council wishes to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I will move my motion. I'm not going to read it out again because Ms. Winter did a great job of reading it out. But I would like to give council some of the background on where this motion is coming from. Over the month of November, I did have several conversations and some correspondence with residents that are still suffering financial effects of COVID-19 in relation to deferrals and still not being able to pay and the penalties that are being levied. And so felt it was probably a good idea to go back to our administration and get a report on this program, how well it worked, whether this is still a widespread problem. And in light of the announcement from the premier today, I think that may shed some light on it. But today I'm looking for some members of council to support getting this report back and the information back on the effectiveness of this program and whether it's whether or not we need to be looking at doing some other things in relation to COVID-19 and the tax penalty process. So open it up for questions from members of council. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. It perfectly makes sense to me that we find out how the program was received and whether it was helpful and what the cost was to the city of Beaumont. And I think it makes a lot of sense. The only question might be, for me, to the administration is what do they feel would be the impact on their time to get this done, and whether they see any problems with achieving this.
Ms. Winter or CAO or Mr. Dollar, one of the three. We'll go to the CAO, start at the top.
Go ahead, Mr. Dollar.
Well, maybe, yeah, start it off and then you can add in where appropriate. I think for us in finance, I think it's going to be fairly straightforward for us to gather some of the data on how many people took advantage of the program. We should be able to develop some high-level costs associated with offering the delay, and look at possibly what kind of penalties households may now be facing. So I think overall, it shouldn't be too much of a burden on the finance staff to put some of those pieces together and possibly come forward with some recommendations given some of the recent announcements that the province has made and where we might want to go for 2021.
Thank you. I think that answers my question.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burkhoff-Swain.
Yeah, and apologies in advance if this question doesn't make sense or if I'm not understanding it properly. So I read the word property tax in the motion, but when we went back and did this, I thought we looked at deferring of water bills and all that sort of stuff as well. Is that kind of under the one umbrella that property tax is covering, or do we need to elaborate that, or am I completely out to lunch?
No, I was specifically thinking the deferral on the property taxes that we did. But yeah, if it's amenable, we could expand the motion to include the deferral program as a whole. Would that cause extra work for admin?
And just to be clear, I'm not for or against it. I guess my thought process would be is we would look at the overall program to see its effectiveness if we're looking at bringing it forward again down the road. So I was just curious if what that meant.
Yeah, from an administrative standpoint, I don't think it's really going to add too much additional work. If council decided to expand the view of this and consider both property tax and utilities, I think it would be pretty straightforward for us to put together the information on the utilities as well.
Okay, so I will make a friendly amendment to my motion to include utility deferrals as well as property tax penalties, as well as property tax.
Thank you.
Seeing no further requests to speak, once again, I really hope council will support this, and we can see what we need to do. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you for your support, council. Item 8F, council policy C43, election signage regulation is looking to probably be a pretty significant discussion, and since we've been sitting for an hour almost, we will take a quick 5 and then come back and pick this up, cognizant of trying to get the break in every hour. So we will call the council meeting back to order, which brings us to item 8F, council policy C43, election signage. Mr. Rates.
All right, good evening, council. I'll just be sharing my screen to provide a brief presentation prior to the discussion that we have. The facets that were covered in the public hearing, we can glaze over pretty quickly now, and the amendment to the traffic safety bylaw is fairly straightforward as well. So the bulk of this presentation will focus on the council policy. And so we'll just come back to the purpose that administration had kind of fostered into this process overall of trying to ameliorate safety concerns, provide a standardized and clear process, as well as limiting any aesthetic impacts that the community had identified. And this comes from direction from Committee of the Whole on September 15th, and then further direction from Council on October 13th, providing specific direction on following through with the regulations that are now held within the council policy. And then, of course, on November 24th, first and second reading of some of these, or of these bylaws. And so on this arc of implementation that we are on right now, we have developed the set of amendments to impacted bylaws and created a council policy. And now this is what we are discussing, or what is administration has brought forward for this evening. And then out of this, we would create guidelines for candidates, and we have some examples of this later on in the meeting. And then this all comes towards 2021 municipal election, as well as all future provincial, federal, or school board elections that would occur within the city of Beaumont. And to review the rationale behind this recommendation, unifying this within the policy is easier to communicate. It also allows for a simpler amendment process, allowing administration to be more nimble to any concerns that are raised regarding election signage during election periods or following election periods, and allows us to address the concerns that were raised through the community and through this process overall. So we have covered the land use bylaw amendments prior in the meeting, just extracting the regulations that existed within there, providing direction to a council policy within the traffic safety bylaw, which we'll cover within this presentation, but will follow, a decision will follow later in the meeting regarding this. But within this bylaw, we added material as we did not provide direction on election signage within public road right-of-way within this bylaw, although this is the more appropriate enforcement mechanism to be doing so. So we have added it in by defining election signs clearly and then adding direction, just like within the land use bylaw, for the council policy, and then clarifying who is responsible for placement in public areas, and then adding a fine for non-compliance to ensure there is an enforcement mechanism that follows. And then the draft council policy is what is being discussed within this specific item within the agenda. And so within the council policy, what is included is that clear definition that reflects what is both within the land use bylaw as well as the traffic safety bylaw, and then the guidelines that are to be followed during election periods for election sign placements are provided, and it's broken into 3 larger categories. The first being design of election signs. This largely reflects what was already present within the land use bylaw for direction on election signs, and was kept consistent as there weren't concerns with the design of election signs, and the restrictions that we had in place did a good job of ensuring that there weren't larger concerns posed by the design of election signs. The second piece within that list of guidelines would be the timelines for when election signs can be placed. And we, of course, will cover the updates to this from what was within the land use bylaw, but there is a departure from what the original land use bylaw approach was regarding timelines. And then the placement of election signs is regulated within 3 different categories at the end, for placement on public property along roadways, and then a second piece for public property not along roadways, just to provide clarity on and really being distinct on where exactly signs are not permitted. And then the final piece, just speaking to private property and where signs can be placed on that. And so within these placement regulations, we've provided for separation distances from both signs of one candidate, or a sign to a sign, as well as a sign to certain features, such as a sign to an intersection or a sign to a curb, or those sort of facets of the built environment. And then also a prohibition of signage being placed in certain areas where safety is a greater concern for the community. And so to just cover these proposed changes that mark the departure from what was within the land use bylaw to what is now included within the council policy. We altered the timelines for removal to align with other jurisdictions in the region. This is more so for provincial and federal elections, just making sure there's consistency across borders. The placement requirements, we have added considerable regulations here to make it clearer and to better meet the concern that was being raised by the public, prohibiting signage in specific locations such as school zones, playground zones, roadway medians. This is to, of course, achieve safety and reduce visual clutter and provide for a clear process. And then the most systemic of the changes, or the largest, would be the distance requirements, requiring spacing between locations and between signs, as described earlier. And this would be the approach that was identified within the review of several municipalities, both in Alberta and across Canada. That was the standard approach, and was also the approach that was indicated as most enforceable by municipal enforcement. And so just to segue into some examples of how we could be communicating this, these are just drafts, high levels that administration will continue to work on to ensure that it's clear for both candidates and community members. But this would be a map describing the location piece of where signs are and are not permitted. And then some more examples of just graphics showing the distances required. And so these are just the drafts at this point in time, and provide you with a first peek at how we would try to communicate these regulations to showcase that we are able to, in a simple way, sort of showcase what are the requirements for both the candidates who would be placing these signs as well as community members. And so next steps, of course, all of this direction comes from direction from council to be bringing forward an update to election signs by January 1st of 2021. So this is part of why we brought forward this approach of amending bylaws and providing a council policy as it was most feasible within the timeline, and also allowed for smooth implementation into 2021. And of course, this leads into the municipal election period next year to ensure that we have both candidates understanding and community members understanding what the new approach would be for election signage. And so that would cover the presentation. And so administration is able to take any questions that you may have at this point.
Appreciate that. It was a great presentation, and it's the culmination of long discussions to this point. So open it up to questions and comments from members of council. Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Margossa.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay, Mayor?
Yep, got you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, for me, thank you for the presentation. I think that the examples of communicating rules, that page 182 is going to be very important moving forward, and to really hone in on that. But overall for me, we've moved away from signs. Sorry, we have moved signs away from corners and parks, separated the signs, moved them back from the edge of the road, but we still haven't addressed the main concern that I heard from residents, which was the sheer volume of signs one candidate can put out there. 15 meters is going to force candidates to race to key areas for advertisement while keeping within their approved measurements, I would say. Number 14, in the policy, it states that signs shall not be placed on public property located outside of areas along public roadways. In other words, and we had asked for clarification on this, I believe, election signs shall not be placed within public parks, along multi-use trail corridors, or beside public parking lots. That's a tough one for folks. And I think for myself, at the end of the day, I support what we've done here, by providing some better, I guess, measurements, the aesthetics of signs being placed farther apart so they're not all piled on top of each other, moving them back from a curb, moving them back from a four-way stop, not having them in playground zones, because we should be watching for kids, not looking for election signage. But we're still, in my view, we're still missing on the volume of signs. That's still a piece that hasn't been addressed for me. Recall I was the person who put a number out there that wasn't supported by council, and that's still where my head is at. This provides some new guideline or new rules, I guess, not guidelines, that are going to need to be followed by a candidate. Should this be approved in its current form, I would be looking for administration to get a good package together, similar to that page 182, to inform candidates of what they can in fact do and where they can in fact put their signage up. Because there will be a significant departure from what I saw in the last election and what people are used to. things need to be updated. This is definitely an update, but I'll be interested to hear what other councillors have to say. But for me, like I said, this still misses the mark on volume of signs per candidate. So those are my comments, I guess, for now. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. So go, or you hit on item number 14. So can you explain that one? Can we get administration to explain that one, what it means and what exactly are we talking about here?
Yes. So to your worship, regarding point 14 within the council policy, this is provided for or included within the council policy just as a coverall to ensure that candidates are not able to be placing signs outside of areas that we would typically or normally regulate them. This is kind of a backstop to ensure that we don't have situations kind of spinning out of where the policy is not speaking to. And so this kind of just covers all of our bases and guides signs to be placed in where we would typically see them and in a method that would ensure safety, standardization of process, and limiting aesthetic impacts along roadways and on private property, basically.
Okay, so specifically, why would, like, I get within public parks, like within parks like Four Seasons and things like that, and I get along the multi-use trail corridors because they get out of sight, they get out of mind. But why would we limit it beside parking lots? Parking lots seem to be a really good place to put an election sign.
So administration would have added that as an example, since parking lots are typically areas where we have several modes or different modes interacting. And so it's similar to, a playground zone or a school zone where you have many, young people walking, parents picking up, school buses. Within a parking lot, you have people driving vehicles through the space, people walking through the space. And so we were just hoping to mitigate any sort of distractions within that environment, because we know that is an environment where there are potential for conflict. And so that sort of also follows the theme that is present within setting election signs back from intersections, as that's another point of conflict.
Okay, appreciate the question. Councillor Markov Swain's following up my point here. So,
yeah, thank you. I just wanted to speak to this point. I'll say the rest of my comments till my turn. So I agree where you're going, Your Worship. Like an example, to put it in black and white, being outside the Kinnickel. Technically, that's a public parking lot along 50th Street. Again, a very popular place. What we're trying to do here is remove ambiguity on the road side of that. I get in and around the parking lot, but on the 50th Street side of that, would you consider that a violation of this policy?
So that would be not public property within the road right of way, which would be that first section. So we're trying to capture areas that would actually be on the property of the recreation center. And so there is a little bit of a distinction there between the road right of way public property and the public property of the facility. And that is definitely an area where administration can really, through graphically kind of representing it, make clear that signage could not be placed on public property of public amenities or infrastructure, but could be placed on public property within road right of way. I think that is a good catch and would be something that could be pretty easily explained within a graphic. So I'm hoping that can kind of address that concern there.
Yeah, thank you. I'll stop. I appreciate that because those are some of my concerns, but so I'll stop and I'll come back in my turn, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, administration. One of the questions I think is similar to what Councillor Van Newkirk was saying. Number 6, I'm not sure I understand it the same way as others do. There shall be at least 15 meters separating the signs of one candidate. So if I'm understanding that correctly, Councillor Hendricks and I could have two signs up and they could be closer than 15 meters, but I couldn't have one of my signs within 15 meters of my sign. Am I right?
So through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, that would be the case. And this is something where the policy may not be the best place to provide that clear example, but it is through within that package that we can provide to candidates where it's very clear that it would be 15 meters between one candidate's sign to the next sign of that candidate.
Which would avoid some of what we did see where it was sign after sign after sign for the same candidate. So that would eliminate that preponderance. But my second question is around the distance to the curb. So it shows up on number 8 and then again number 16. And well, actually, no, that's the driveway. The curb is number 15. I was out walking today and was trying to imagine what that would look like. And 1.5 meters, maybe Miss Dargy can help me. She probably knows exactly what that distance is. But from the curb to the sidewalk doesn't look like more than 1.5 meters. And so that means there's no signs in that section that I think is public property managed by the homeowners. Just because I know trees get built there and the city pays for those trees. So I'm just wondering about the enforcement of that. Is that even possible?
Your worship, through to Councillor Barnhart. So you're correct. 1.5 meters is actually the typical distance from the curb to the sidewalk. That's about 5 feet. So what this will do, and what we're talking about here, is more the location of these signs on private property. So candidates have an opportunity to canvass residents, to solicit having their sign placed on their residents' property. These regulations dictate how far that sign can be from any of those private property lines, and as well then that it wouldn't be able to be in that municipal boulevard along private property. So where we are saying that you can have signs is along 50th Street where there is public property because there's enough distance. There's 1.5 meters from the curb, but when you're getting into places where you have a separate sidewalk and a boulevard there's not enough room to put a sign there. You'll have to go onto private property. There are areas in Beaumont where there is more than 1.5 meters between the curb and the sidewalk, or that there isn't a sidewalk. There might be a monolithic sidewalk, so a sidewalk that abuts the street. And then you would have an opportunity to put a sign on the other side of the sidewalk. So there are different opportunities depending on where you're looking to put signage in Beaumont.
And just further to that, along the golf course, Colonial Golf Course, is that considered private property?
Just sorry to clarify, because the golf course runs through a lot of Beaumont.
You're right. So on Colonial Country Club Drive, Colonial Drive, that that sidewalk that goes along there that connects to the trail, then there shouldn't be any signs there unless the golf course has approved it.
Correct.
And I think that's been a pretty popular place in the past. So I just wonder about that being a specific area. Yeah.
So the area that on the south side of Country Club Drive or Colonial Way, sorry, I'm just very quickly looking at a map, but the area that adjoins 241 on the south side of that roadway where the driving range is, there should be enough distance between the roadway, the curb, and that fence line that is considered road right-of-way, and that signage could be placed there.
Okay, but it can't be 1.5 meters close to the curb. It has to be more than 1.5. Okay, pretty tight. It's going to be against the fence, I think, but anyway, that'll be a challenge. Thank you for that.
Councillor Monk, appreciate that. Councillor Monk,
Yeah, thank you. I'll reinforce what Councillor Barnhart said. I think it's going to be a challenge for administration to answer a lot of these questions, and I really appreciate the examples being put in here of what the visual is going to look like, because there are going to be a lot of questions. So just that heads up. but my general comments are, up front, you talked about the purpose of addressing safety concerns, standardization of process, and really aesthetic impact. So I agree with the goals. I don't think this policy meets it. And I'll really piggyback off what Councillor Van Nieuwkerk mentioned earlier about the volume. And, you know, I respect that we had this argument debate earlier, and I was on the wrong side of that. So I'm not going to look to try and reignite that one. But just generally, I don't support the policy because of I think we should be limiting number of signs versus distance between them. But recognizing that is where it is, I'd like to try and improve this one along the way. So if you look at guideline number 1 in the package there on page 169, and Councillor Hendricks, I'll have to ask for your forgiveness on this one, but it talks about 0.6 meters squared, and I recall going back and stressing out over the dimensions of this. And trying to do the math, which is always a dangerous task for me. But then also when I'm going to look to purchase these signs, all the dimensions are in inches by inches on those signs. So I wonder if we could just add, you know, just some parentheses around it and just put it in the imperial system, just to, I recognize we're in Canada here, but just from a clarity perspective, it kept me up at night, and I was measuring and measuring and measuring. So just a comment there for number 1. Number 14, we addressed, so I appreciate that. I did want to talk about the timelines for removal. What I don't see in here, and again, apologies if I misread it, but what I don't see here is the timelines for when folks can actually put up their signs. So with the change in legislation, you know, technically January 1 being the election year, can, you know,
guidelines 4 and 5.
Sorry.
Guidelines 4 and 5.
It's in there.
Yeah, so it's 30 days ahead of the voting day.
30 days in advance until 3 days. Okay, my apologies. I missed that one there. Sorry. Good to go. Again, like I said, I won't be supporting the policy here because of my comments earlier. But would appreciate just that little amendment to guideline number 1. And thanks for pointing out guideline number 5.
So I'll just ask administration if that's a friendly amendment, or would you like council to vote on that proposal?
If I may address that, Your Worship, through to council. With respect to in the official policy stating it in square meters, I would suggest that we still stay with that, but in the package to candidates, we can clarify that and put that into inches and feet, so that depending on how you work, who you're contracting with, you have multiple measurements that you can use. But I would recommend that leaving it in the policy that we stick with meters. It's consistent with all of our other documents that talk about that.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Yeah, thank you.
And then if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind just speaking to the issue with or addressing the number of signs. So when we look at all of the regulations that are put in place here and really considering where you can and can't put signs based on the distances to different places, the distances between each candidate's signs, you really are limiting the number of signs that a candidate can put out without actually specifying a specific number. We feel that these measurements, these guidelines and regulations are something that we can enforce as opposed to a specific number. Given the size of Beaumont, I think it would be very, very difficult for us to actually count a candidate's signs to make sure they're in compliance with it. And so with these regulations, ultimately you are ending up regulating the number of signs that a candidate can put out.
So I said I wouldn't go there, but you brought it up, so now you've got me all fired up. So I take your point. Again, I disagree. You know, we're trying to provide clarity for folks. Like if you just said the number was 50, 100, 150, whatever it ended up being, then every candidate knows, okay, this is the number of signs that I can do. Now, they're going to have to go out and get a measuring tape and like, okay, how many can I fit here? How many can I do there? So I think we're missing the mark on the goal in terms of making it easier for candidates to understand the policy. I get maybe a bit easier for administration, but I think the whole point of this was, you know, if it was 50 and someone brought 60 and someone really wanted to go around and count signs and get administration involved in that, then that's just a PR nightmare for them. So I think most people would stick to it from a number perspective. I think now we're just going to have multiple people going out there with a measuring tape, and there still could easily be over 250 signs per person, given the number of spaces by some rough measurements. So yeah, respectfully disagree, but I recognize I won't win that, so I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Hendricks.
Hey, Beth, thank you. Also, just wanted to point out some of the unintended consequences of, you know, putting in a policy like this. You know, we had a situation, or candidates, myself included, you know, you throw a magnet on your vehicle and you drive around. You know, should this policy be approved tonight and we have an election and people go to the CCBCC to vote, there's nowhere along 50th Avenue to put you're going to be able to put up a sign. Because the boulevard is there, the road is there, the sidewalk is there. When I close my eyes and think about what it looked like there, out in front of the nice fence, there was a nice piece of grass there, and kind of 20 signs were there, right? Like, you know, one for each candidate on the way in. Now, you know, I guess I could have a truck and trailer pulled in with signage on it on the side of the road, and, you know, do it that way. You know, these are some of the unintended consequences that happen when we put these types of restrictions in, right? So just want to point that out to the group. And on the volume of signs, we have a lot of square meters of grass, and there are a lot of places signs can go. You know, when you make any change, there's going to be a learning curve. You know, you're going to be able to educate as much as you can. But you know, when a couple of people in the community take on the sign police role, because I know how folks in the community operate, doesn't matter what we put in place, there's going to be complaints, whether it's the number of signs or whether it's measurements or whether you can or cannot put it here. I don't think we solve any enforcement issues with one way or the other. And, you know, back to my original point on volume of signs, I'm still there. I don't think we've solved the problem that we've went out to, that I was hoping we'd solve. So for myself, I wouldn't support the policy either. Thank you.
Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, to Mrs. Darge's point, that's how I read what was going on in terms of the math. You know, it ultimately does eliminate signage, and it does declutter this community. If you have numbers or not, you still got to say where you're going to put them, or where you won't allow them to go, because of the cluttering issue that I keep hearing about through this discussion. The other thing was the last election, there was a multiplier in there, and that was the number of candidates. And why was there so many candidates? Well, there's only 2 returning councillors. Everybody else was fresh, and there was a mayor's race. So that generated a lot of interest and a lot of energy. So we had like 20 councillors. So the multiplier is the number of 20 nominated individuals. So you have a multiplier of 20 just in that area alone. So to me, it's I don't know if you'll have it this time around. Maybe you will. Generally speaking, if there's a lot of people returning as incumbents, then that definitely makes the field a lot smaller, a lot shorter. So the multiplier is the number of people. But to Mrs. Darge's point, and it is a very good point, these documents take you there. These documents basically eliminate the signage. And these documents, regardless if you had 50 or 100 as something that you could tell a candidate, you still got to follow this as to where they can be placed for all the issues: safety, clutter, all the rest. So I'm okay with this document. It's self-enforcing. If somebody reads it, I think they can get the grasp. I like the idea of a map that sort of suggests, okay, these areas are just out of bounds, period. Doesn't take long for a candidate to get the grasp of what's going on in these documents and run accordingly. So I'm okay with the way it's set up. So.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hendricks. Councillor Danlock?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was similarly having a concern in an earlier discussion about, I was on the side of having a number of sign limited as well too, which this policy doesn't address. I'm struggling. Part of me wants to say no, because the numbers of signs aren't there, but I understand the policy is trying to find that middle ground, and council in its wisdom went to this particular direction on the policy. My question is, should this policy be defeated tonight? When can it come back to us, or does it come back to us at all before the next election? Just a procedural question. If I may ask that question. If I can't, I'll withdraw it. But I'm just curious if that answer can be answered.
But if we get the honestly, if we get the hint that it's not going to pass, we should be deferring it and bringing it back for further discussion. But I think this is one of those items that could come back to a committee of the whole meeting and be dealt with in January. Fortunately, election signage, as much as we'd like to have it ready, we don't need until 30 days before the election. So I don't think there's as big a, and Ms. Winter or Ms. Dargy can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's as big a push on this as some other issues surrounding the election. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we could bring it back in January if we had to. Ms. Winter?
Thank you, Your Worship. As we all know, January 1st is the start of the nomination period. Legislative Services is combining all the information and a candidate package. If for some reason between January and September, if we go back and change the policy and bring the policy in January, February, I can always contact anyone who's put in their nomination to let them know of the changes, since the signs wouldn't be reflected until 30 days out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Margolis-Swain, we'll go for round two now that everybody's had round one.
Yeah, just my point being is I don't think we need to go back to committee of the whole. I think we've had a good, robust discussion about it, and I recognize I'm on the wrong side of that, and that's okay. So I think there is at least 4 votes for this, so I wouldn't recommend us needing to go back and let's just vote on it. I think would be my comment.
You, Councilor Barnhart?
Yes, Your Worship, I just wanted to be clear that I will be supporting this policy as it stands. Is it perfect? No, but does it get us closer to where we need to be? I think it does. The math is there. It definitely, when I looked at it, yeah, fewer signs will be able to go up. You'll have to be probably more inclined to go towards getting residents to support candidates as opposed to public roadways for signage and that. I think it declutters the community so that we don't have the preponderance of candidate signs all gathered together, and it improves safety. So for those reasons, I will be supporting it. It's not perfect, and I think it could be reviewed as we get closer, perhaps make some changes for the next council. I'll be supporting it.
Okay, so seeing no further requests to speak, I will move that council approve council policy C43, election signs policy as presented in attachment 1. Further discussion on the motion, or are we ready to vote? Vote. Okay, call the question. All in favor? All right, that carries with a vote of 4-3. Myself, Councillor Hendricks, Councillor Barnhart, and Councillor Stout in favor. Opposed, Councillors Daniluk, Margolis-Swain, and Van Newkirk. All right. So that brings us to item 9A, bylaw 993-20, election bylaw for second and third reading.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to members of council and the public. The election bylaw provides the procedures of a general election. Local municipalities have the authority to pass bylaws for the conduct of elections. I've updated the bylaw and I'm proposing the following changes. Section 3, appointment of a substitute returning officer. This section has been added in here that will ensure that if for some reason the returning officer is unable to perform her duties, another returning officer would be able to stand in. Section 5, the nomination update. This aligns with the new legislation amendments with nomination beginning on January 1st. Section 8, elector assistance. This is a new section that's been added in during the advance vote. An elector who has a physical disability or is unable to attend a voting station in advance voting can make arrangements for voting from home. Section 8 is a change in voting hours. Amendment for hours for an election day to have the ability to open voting stations at 6:30 a.m. This is to ensure that electors are given every opportunity to be able to cast their votes. Administration has also made a couple of outdated updates in titles and so on through the bylaw. This evening, administration is looking for first, second, and third reading. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Is there a member of council willing to move first reading of bylaw 993-20? And Councilor Danwick.
So moved, Your Worship. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion?
Okay.
Councilor Barnhart?
Yeah, just one question, Your Worship, to Ms. Winter. Is the act that it's referred to in there the Municipal Government Act, and is that where January 1st appears?
Through your worship to Councilor Barnhart, no, that's actually the Local Authorities Election Act is how it's conducted through this election bylaw.
Okay, so that's referred to, so therefore we don't have that in front of us, but the act has been changed to say January 1st is when nominations can be accepted.
Through the Local Authorities Election Act, yes, that's correct.
Thank you for that.
You have to file nomination papers in order to start any type of campaign activity, if I remember it correctly too. But that'll all come out in a package. Councilor Hendricks, did you wish to speak? Have a question?
No, thank you.
Sorry, I just saw a hand moving. No further hands raised for discussion. All those in favor of first reading? That carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move the council give second reading to bylaw 993-20 election bylaw, a bylaw to repeal 807.13 and 901.17 election bylaw? Councilor Barnhart.
So moved, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councilor Stout. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, and I probably have asked this before, but I'm just puzzled by, there seems to be a slight inconsistency in what I'm seeing on the request for decision and what's actually in the bylaw. It refers to amending section 8, changes in voting hours, but as far as I can see, voting hours are in section 9. Is that correct?
Ms. Winter?
I'm just going to pull up the bylaw here. That might have just been an error in my notes. Section 9 is voting hours. My apologies.
So it's the RFD that needs to be amended to say 9. Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to confirm.
My apologies there.
Councilor Danwick?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question, if you don't mind, Ms. Winter. Section 12, the counting center, 12.1, returning officers shall ensure counting center secure from unauthorized access by persons. I went through the bylaw. If I missed it, I apologize, but are candidates allowed to be inside the counting center once the doors close at 8 o'clock? At the election 3 years ago, I heard some conflicting information on that. So can you clarify if candidates are considered unauthorized in the counting center under 12.1?
Go to that section just a moment.
Unless it's stated somewhere else in the document, I may have missed it, but I don't remember if it talks about actual candidates for council or mayor, whichever the case may be, if they're allowed in the counting center after the polls close.
Thank you. Sorry.
Go ahead. If you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Daniluk. Candidates are allowed to be within, and the counting center is typically where the actual vote, like it would be like the CCBCC. So they would be allowed to be over in another area or have someone that is there on their behalf.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's my assumption. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further requests, call the question. All in favor of second reading? And that carries unanimously. I will move that council give unanimous consent to proceed to third reading of election bylaw 993-20. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move third reading of election bylaw 993-20? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. So moved.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously, which brings us to item 9B, bylaw 992-20, traffic safety bylaw amendment, third reading. Mr. Rhodes.
So administration has brought forward the amendment to this bylaw to work in conjunction with all other bylaws that have passed, as well as the council policy that has passed. And so, as indicated within the presentation, this amendment would just introduce the ability to properly enforce election sign regulations within public road right-of-way placement. So administration is able to handle any or accept any questions regarding this now.
Is there a member of council willing to move third reading? Okay, I'll move third reading. Questions on the motion? Councillor Hendricks?
Your Worship, page 201. Item 10.09. 10.09. Just like to get some clarity.
Mr. Rates?
Through your worship, Councillor Hendricks, it was page 201.
Yes, item 10.09.
Sorry, I'm in the wrong.
203 in the package.
06.
Okay. I am just
Anyway, 10.9 of the bylaw is the one we're looking for.
10.09. Yes, so I have that in front of me, and there is just a question regarding this.
Yes, so we're speaking in definitions of highway. Is 50th Street northbound a highway?
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, the use of the term highway within this bylaw is defined higher within the bylaw. So we didn't provide that context that basically a highway within the traffic safety bylaw is all roadways within the city of Beaumont. Yeah, so hopefully that provides a little bit of clarity that it isn't strictly highway in the normal sense of the term that we use day to day, but it's how it is defined within the bylaw. That would mean roadways.
Okay, so with that in mind, 50th Street northbound in the ditch, if we can call it that, the medium, is signage allowed?
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, this would be covered within the policy under placing it within the median. So it should be covered within what we've included within the policy.
So the legal answer is yes or no?
Through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, the legal answer is yes. It is covered.
It's covered, so it's not allowed.
Through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, it would not be permitted.
Thank you. Thank you.
But the ditches on the right-hand sides of the roads as you travel in the direction of travel is allowed the way I read that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so not the medium, but port side and starboard on either side is fine. I'm with you. Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Okay, seeing none, call the question. All in favor of third reading? And that carries unanimously, which brings us to item 9C, bylaw 98620, fees and charges, first, second, and third reading. Mr. DeBlanco.
Thank you. Hello again, council. Before you is a request to give 3 readings to the 2021 fees and charges bylaw. The city's fees and charges bylaw is reviewed and updated by each of the respective service areas in the organization. Changes are made based on operational considerations and are evaluated for reasonableness through benchmarking against other municipalities in the region. The 2021 fees and charges were reviewed and discussed with council at the budget deliberations held on November 26th through 28th, and any changes made by council have been incorporated in schedules. Ads have been placed in the Beaumont News to provide public notice of this bylaw. Financial impact, the increase or decrease in some cases of the fees and charges assistance providing funding for direct services to residents, businesses, and developers, and to reduce the impact of the property tax levy. The proposed changes are to be in place after third and final reading of the bylaw and are reflected in the 2021 budget that was approved earlier this evening. Thank you to your worship and council. Administration can now take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. So just for clarity, they come into effect Jan 1 or come into effect upon third reading, the new rates?
They would come in effect January 1.
Okay, thank you. Is there a member of council willing to move first reading of bylaw 986-20 fees and charges? Councillor Danlon.
So moved, your worship. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion. Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, just for consistency and question will come up anyways, childcare fees, that does reflect 3% versus 10.
Yeah, I checked. Oh, sorry.
Through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, the child care fee increase was adjusted 3%, which was updated in the 2021 budget.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Councillor Dallek.
Sorry, Perry, I was talking to myself and mic was on, sorry. I did check that a while ago, sorry. My mic was supposed to be muted, sorry, talking to myself.
Okay.
Sorry, John.
All right, it's been a long meeting. We're all getting a little punchy. Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Yeah, no, just wanted to thank administration for including the fine print on Schedule 5 there. There is no cost for based in nonprofits and those organizations that may have received funding through the Community Grants Program for items within Schedule 5. So thank you for that. And that reflects 100% the conversation we had at budget.
With that, Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Worship. My question is way down there on the environmental fees, which is on page 28 of the fees and charges report. And I don't recall us ever talking much about the idling bylaw or the penalty for idling. And I was surprised to see 3 minutes and thought of how many times I waited outside school for my kids to come or my grandkids to come, and it took more than 3 minutes in the middle of winter. So I guess I'm wondering, is that complaint driven? Are there actually, are the bylaws officers finding that is a serious problem? And just wondering if there's any, maybe this is not the time, but if there was any information on that, I'd appreciate knowing it.
Yeah,
I don't want to get into a huge conversation surrounding individual bylaws. If we need more, we'll get it back. But if we can do this quick, we'll entertain it. Mr. Blanco.
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, I couldn't comment on that specific fee. If Ms. Dargy could comment, has any background on that, I'd refer the question to her. Other than that, we can get some rationale back to you at another date on that specific fee.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Council. Unfortunately, this isn't an area that our department enforces, so I don't have information specifically on this 3 minutes idling. That would have to be addressed by municipal enforcement.
Okay, so maybe the best way to handle this, Councillor, is a quick notice of motion at the end to direct administration to person report, unless I see the CEO popping up, if he can do it in 3 minutes.
What I was going to offer is, why don't we just get back to you? I'll talk to the Director of Protective Services. I'm not aware of it being high on anybody's radar, but I can find out and get an answer back to you by email if that's sufficient.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
no, that works for me. Yeah, save a bunch of grief. Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, there has been some background on this particular item, mainly due to a drive-through situation, and I believe a global news television piece that was done on somebody who got a ticket. So, and I believe it was all brought back to council as a conversation. And I think the key word in all this is unnecessarily, which was, I believe, added to this discussion. But you know, and I appreciate Councillor Barnhart's need to wait probably 3+ minutes for the grandkids. I wouldn't see that as being unnecessarily waiting. She's doing a
My
great
husband
service.
has to wait for.
I said the husband instead, but unnecessarily seemed to have been the key word. And but we do have some background on it. We have gone through this once before, so thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, Councillor. I didn't mean to laugh out loud, but I remember when that went down and the news media story and the ensuing discussions that went on at that council. So yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it was a Canadiana moment.
That was an interesting conversation you guys had.
Yeah.
All right, seeing no further requests to speak or questions, we'll call a question. All those in favor of first reading? Councillor Daniluk, yeah. Flash on and off.
All right, I hit the green button, nothing happened. There we go.
No worries, that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move second reading? Councillor Stout.
So moved, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion?
No.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Oh, sorry.
That carries unanimously. I will move that council provide unanimous consent to proceed to third reading of bylaw 98620 fees and charges. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move third reading? Councillor Daniluk.
So moved, Your Worship. Thank you. Third reading.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Okay, we just gotta wait for the votes to clear. We'll call the question. All those in favor of third reading? And that carries unanimously. Appreciate that. Which brings us to item number 10, councillor inquiries and reports. We'll start with councillor inquiries, and then any councillor wishing to make a statement can go after that. Is there members of council that have questions of administration this evening? Councillor Hendricks, followed by Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just on a question regarding the communications plan for our COVID situation. Just wondering how things are moving along.
Yes, good evening, Councillor Hendricks. Unless Mike Berezowski wants to weigh in, we're currently assessing the new measures and, you know, how they're going to impact our service levels, how they're going to impact our operations, how they're going to impact budgets, and what communications need to be pulled together. So that will be to follow. We have meetings tomorrow with AHS and with our regional CAOs to do some regional pieces as well.
Right.
Mike, did you want to add anything to that?
No, actually, I think you got that covered very well there, Mr. Schwartz.
I'm learning.
If I can just add one, the mini survey I did over the weekend, just asking people, where do you get your information regarding Beaumont? You know, and we know what we get for readership on the website, and you know, and people who read the Latin Bell. We have to find another avenue to get to people somehow. So I just throw that out. There's just people that aren't tech savvy. They're not looking at our website. They're not looking for information there. In fact, one gentleman was quite surprised at the level of COVID we had in Beaumont. So because he just hasn't been getting information from anywhere, it seems, other than CBC and others. So anything we can do to update that or spin that in a different way, that'd be fantastic. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Van Newkirk, questions of admin?
Yeah, thank you. I had a question posed to me by a local nonprofit. There was a grant that was just put out there called the Civil Society Fund. It's $20 million that is put in place for a whole bunch of things. Municipalities isn't one of them. But the question is sometimes these grants can be hard to write and hard to get across the line. Does the municipality have any resources for that? And I know that this is a subject that would be hard to. We're not in the business of writing grants for people, but are there supports that exist in the community to support the groups who are writing grants? I don't know that. I'm just wondering if administration can comment to that.
A suggestion I would make is that that person contact FCSS, or you give us the contact information and we'll contact them. I know Kim does help some groups with grant writing as well, and we may have resources here at City Hall as well in addition. But if we get the contact information, I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know we have people that can help people fill out grants.
Yeah, that's fair. That's kind of what I let them know. So, I'll share that information back and leave it in their capable hands. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Daniluk?
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Just a comment to my council colleagues and also administration. Since last time we met as a council, I got 2 phone calls from citizens complimenting administration and council on the snow removal this year again. So it's getting a lot of good kudos out there. And these are phone calls as opposed to emails I could pass on to administration and council. But when people take the time to make a phone call, they're really happy. And that's a good thing. So again, more positive feedback for administration on the new way we're doing snow removal for this winter season. So again, great kudos. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daniluk. Were any of those people from Park Lane?
Not yet. Not yet.
No,
but
2 of my neighbors are asking about our cul-de-sac. Just saying, but that's kind of funny. We got it done last year, and they're very happy. So I told them we're in the queue. It'll come when it comes. It's going to follow a set pattern, and that's how it works. So yeah.
But please take a drive-by to see what standard was set by the citizen at 4414. See what he's done with his roadway. The only thing missing is white lines painted on the asphalt. Thank you.
All right, not wanting to get into a whole discussion here. There are other members of council wishing to make statements this evening? Okay, I do. Okay, Councillor Stout.
Just quickly, a quick update. I was, which I should have reported last meeting, but failed to do so. In that I was re-elected as vice chair of the Duke and District Regional Waste Management Authority. And as an aside, the movement to transform the authority into a commission will probably be coming back to council due to the red tape reduction, which is policies which have changed and simplified the need for a commission, but also now specify that councils have got to agree to it again. So you'll probably be seeing that, and as we've already discussed it and approved it, I'm assuming it will simply be a matter of it will be something that will appear on the consent agenda, and I'm hoping we can avoid it altogether, but I suspect it may not be the case.
Yeah, I don't know whose red tape they reduced with that one, but it didn't help us. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I just want to make a quick statement. I do know that the announcements that were made by the Premier today and the ministers regarding the new COVID restrictions and the new lockdowns are going to have a profound effect on our community. I'd like to assure our community that as we are working through them, we will continue to update them as to how it's going to impact our city facilities. And if there's anything that our city can do in terms of help, please reach out to our FCSS department or other departments as may be, and we will do what we can to get through this as a community together. It's going to be tough. I would like to remind resident staff and members of council that kindness is going to be key over the next 4 weeks as we push through this. We did it once back in March. We can do it again, and I have great confidence in this community to be able to pull together, to be able to get through it, and I have great confidence in our administration to be able to get our city staff to get us through the goalposts. So going forward, we will get through this together, and we'll move forward. CAO. You're on mute. You're still on mute. Mike, you're on mute.
I know, that's got to be the most famous line I get all day long. Mike, you're on mute. Just echo your thoughts on COVID. Our community, we're sitting at 94 active cases as for the last 24 hours, up 6 from the previous 24-hour period. No additional deaths. You watch our numbers over the last 14 days, 10 to 14 days. We skyrocketed up to 100, and then we creeped down to about 83. So we've been funneling in between that 83 and say back up to 94 now. And I hesitate to say that if I'm watching trends, it's not a really bad one. So it shows me that the folks in Beaumont are making an effort, and we certainly appreciate that. The new measures came down today, effective immediately, no indoor, outdoor gatherings, and a mandatory mask across the province. And then there's a number of other restrictions that are being in place at 12:01 on December 13th, including closing of our facilities. So administration, our recreation facilities, admin's currently looking at the impacts to our service levels and operations. And a good comment about the local businesses. We will be reaching out to see how we can help and provide any assistance and just try and get a pulse so that we can communicate that to council on a regular basis to let people know how things are going. I'm in a couple meetings tomorrow with AHS to try and give us more details on the measures after the announcement today. And I'm also meeting with my regional colleagues as we look at regional communications and regional approaches to rolling out these new measures. But you're right, they're in place for a minimum of 4 weeks. I didn't have anything else. Appreciate, great meeting. Went through a lot of agenda items today. Good job, council. It's been a bit of a last 10, 14 days for you. Hopefully you can get a bit of a breath as we move into the holiday season. So thank you.
Appreciate that. We have no items of correspondence.
Sorry. I just had a quick and maybe a comment from Mike. And I know you know this, but if we could get, once you understand the new measures, if we could just get particular communication around some of the outdoor activities, particularly around the outdoor rinks. A lot of folks are wanting to understand what that means. So I know you guys are all trying to figure it out first and foremost, but let's use our social media and etc. to get that information out about the rinks. Thank you.
Certainly, and I'll trigger a specific question that we had a chance to ask Dr. Hinshaw today. That was particular to outdoor rinks, and the restriction is a maximum of 10 people unless they're your family cohort, and then you still need to respect physical distancing. But let me get more details as well, and we'll definitely get it out. Thank you.
Okay, not wanting to devolve this back into a bunch of questions, we'll entertain Councillor Stout and Councillor Barnhart, and then we're going to move on. Councillor Stout?
Sorry, I didn't have a question. I've just not lowered my hand.
Because we do have a COVID-19 briefing on Thursday, where hopefully we'll be able to ask more questions and get more clarity. Councillor Barnhart?
Just a quick one, Mr. Schwartz. Does the Toboggan Hill fall under the restrictions of no outdoor gatherings? Toboggan Hills.
That question was asked today, and the answer we got so far is that it will still be allowed to function, provided physical distancing is abided by. We're going to get clarification for that hopefully tomorrow afternoon.
That's a tough one. I know the number of people there has been significant, so yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you.
So I guess the takeaway is administration's working on it. More information to follow. Brings us back to notices of motion. Do members of council, besides myself, have a notice of motion they wish to make this evening? Okay, seeing none, I do have one. That council directed administration to review the terms of reference of the CCBCC Advisory Committee and bring back a recommendation to dissolve the committee. And that'll come up at our first council meeting in January. We have no items in closed session. We hit adjournment. So once again, I'd like to thank council. It's been a long couple weeks, and if COVID continues the way it's going, it's going to be another long couple weeks. So appreciate all your hard work, your perseverance. And yeah, hopefully we'll get close to Christmas and get a bit of a break, but it could be like our summer. We could be meeting all Christmas. So I appreciate council hanging in there with me, and we'll move forward and get through this together, and we'll call that